budget and kind of why I was asking for what I was asking for. Under new budget items, the Schoology, I know that Mr. Graham has already spoke about the learning management system, the Schoology, and it is a cost. It's $10 a student is what it averages out to be. But again, that's where teachers don't have to spend time building a web page. Basically builds it for them. They can post content. The students can have access to anything that they want to upload. They can grade within Schoology. They can actually collaborate with teachers all over the place, as Mr. Graham shared. There's a lot of things that can happen within that learning management system. And so we've also gone ahead and implemented the paid version as well. But then funding that for next year is an important piece. The last component of the budget will be athletics. And I've actually asked Mr. Montag to join me here today, and so he's going to come and speak about the athletic components. Come on, Mr. Montag. This packet, it's a separate packet, but it's all athletics. And what I asked Mr. Montag to do, and he did this very quickly, actually, as soon as I asked him to do it, he was on it. But I asked him to capture where we were and give me a budget based on where we really need to be, because we have a lot of coaches that are volunteering, that are doing things for free that we aren't funding. And there's been a lot of growth in the programs, I think quick growth. And so just really trying to get up to where we need to be. And it is a huge cost. When you look at the budget, there are a lot of things that are added, but I asked him to be very specific. So when you go through this, you're going to see, and we did it in color. And so he's going to kind of describe to you exactly what is where and why we've placed it there.
Okay.
Not putting you on the spot too much, am I?
No, my heart.
I'll stand here with you.
No, that's perfect. How you doing? Brian Montag with Oasis High School Athletics, and of course Oasis Middle School Athletics, as Mr. Graham pointed out. There has been a tremendous amount of growth, and to give you an idea, looking over some numbers earlier, since we opened up our athletic program back in 2009, we had 220 total high school students. That number increased to 371 2010, 540 to 2011, 681 in 2012. A little bit of a dip, 669 in 2013, and right to where we are, 2014 was 722, 749 in 2015, and of course we're looking to add, you said about 20, 30 some students from here, correct? So yes, in a short amount of time we have had tremendous growth. Now with that, the student interest has grown, the parental involvement within our community has grown to be a part of, developing those programs, helping their kids, advance their athletic careers as well. Now, some of these numbers that you're looking at on the very front page, these are our athletic ad pays for everything top to bottom, middle, high school. And this was a list that I was actually fortunate enough to be a part of developing back in April of 2012. At that time, I was only working with middle school athletics. Jason Bauman was the high school athletic director. To give you an idea of how long ago it was, Dr. Bush was here, Dave Fiorello. So April 2012 was the last time we actually sat down and talked about some numbers as it pertains to athletic coaches' ad pays. Front page, anything in green is pertaining to middle school. Some items here in red, things don't necessarily used too often, but they're still listed. Moving on into page 2. Again, you see the color green. Those are to signify that we have individual team sports. So those numbers may vary. It's not like a basketball roster where you have 12 to 13 kids per roster, and that's what you can expect to submit to the state at the every year's state entry list. Golf, you're pretty much limited to 5. Swim can vary. Cross country, the same deal there. Wrestling, believe it or not, is a co-ed sport. Not many of our students know that. Females are, of course, welcome to participate. Track and field, tennis, those numbers vary from year to year. And even though our numbers continue to grow when it comes to athletic participation, it's those individual team sports that I happen to notice a little bit of lag in growth, particularly the female side of things. And for the reason for that, we haven't been able to narrow that one down. For example, cross country will have 10 males and then 1 female. Maybe it's just they don't want to run 3 miles, I'm not sure. But with those teams expanding, like I said, Mrs. Treese pointed out, we do have a lot of coaches that are just volunteering. As you can see, going down the list, oh gosh, you prepared me for this, didn't you? Okay, so golf right now has a head coach and a volunteer assistant. Now, we've actually been able to expand on that team. For example, we have a boys and girls team now, and last year was the first year we actually sent a girls team to a regional tournament, which is a huge success. But that coach was also doing it free of charge. Happy to have him. He's happy to be a part of it. Don't want to lose that individual by any means. Now,
You might want to talk about this number.
okay, if you notice off to the far right, everything in red, I look to increase on the overall cost per sport, but then taking a second glance at it, I kind of pulled back the reins just a little bit. Not looking to go too far, wanted to make it within a reasonable reach. So for football, for example, right now we have one head coach and one assistant coach. And anyone who knows the sport of football, that's not exactly a decent coaching staff, just two individuals. Our dynamics for football are a little bit different. We play an 8-man game that don't necessitate 50 to 60 kids on a roster. We're limited to 25. So with that being the case, I was thinking maybe 3, maybe 4 total coaches to divvy up those responsibilities with that coaching staff would be sufficient enough. Volleyball, JV, varsity, I mean, as you notice, there's, for example, with volleyball, I did pull away one of the assistants because their roster sizes are not as large. Okay, what else? On to page number 3, those are your official costs. Those won't change based upon our enrollment numbers. That's going to be determined by our associations. Every year we're looking at about $2,000 for football because we host only 5 home games. Now we're hoping to, of course, host a home playoff game, which increases that need. Volleyball, about $1,300. And then basketball, about $3,400 for boys. Pretty much the same number for girls, which makes it a combined total of about $7,000 and some change for boys and girls basketball. One thing that basketball does that volleyball does not is that volleyball will send you 2 officials for one night, which do 2 games, but basketball will send you upward of 5 individuals in one night, 2 for the JV game, 3 for the varsity. So with that being the case, there's added travel costs and other booking fees associated with it. Soccer, we're looking to maintain the same. We're hoping to actually add a JV squad per boys and girls. Last year our numbers were in the 20s, and a comfortable roster for the boys and girls soccer team, maybe about 15 kids total. Of course, as you know, 11 men on the field, a few reserves waiting to come on in, but we had 22 individuals actually competing for our soccer teams this past year per team, per gender, I should say. Baseball, $3,000 as well. Softball, right in that neighborhood. Wrestling, we don't host as many wrestling matches as we do volleyball games or basketball games, so that number is a little bit, is much, much less. And like I said, those are fees that are associated to each individual sport based upon our associations and what they decide, what they want to charge.
Before we leave this page, can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
We have costs for hosting these games. What about, where does the income come from, gate fees and things like that? Where does that factor into our income?
The income per athletic event?
No, right, yeah.
We obviously charge a gate collection at every home game that we can charge a gate. For example, volleyball, basketball, wrestling, which we can use our gym to help with that process. Soccer, we don't necessarily get that opportunity because we're at a Pelican Field or a Jim Jeffers. Baseball, we've been able to make it work out, but any clever kid can get around our gate collections at a baseball game. Softball was a little bit different this year. Softball, in years past, we were at BMX Park, which provided no opportunity to generate great gate revenue. But with the unfortunate events of January 9th, when the tornado touched down, the city moved us from BMX so they can transplant their Pelican families to BMX, us up to Northwest, which then actually did provide us an opportunity with some sort of funneling of a gate to make some revenue per team. So this past year, we've had some success generating a few more dollars when it comes to gate collection.
Where is that reflected in the budget? How do we, internal funds?
Mm-hmm.
What we're able to collect to offset the costs, and have we looked at other ways to create revenue from those? sponsors?
We currently do
food,
offer a
those kinds of
banner
things?
sponsorship program. As you drive into our Oasis campus, you may see all the banners off to your right-hand side coming up the high school driveway. There are 2 different programs we run. We try to get banners over at the middle school and at the high school. And that does generate a fairly decent amount of revenue, but that goes to each individual team. That's also an internal fund deposit. And the whole idea behind that is a student athlete is to go out and acquire a sponsor for
Right.
any needs that team may need. For example, like team packs or fun items like sweatshirts and caps and whatnot. So if the student has a fee of $100 per team, for example, they go out acquire that sponsor, the money that then stays in the parent's pocket.
How do the coaches have a budget? How does the coach's budget work? For example, football coach with helmets, where does his money come from?
As right now, it's pretty much all internal funds.
Internal funds?
Mhm.
And I would assume our gate collections are not sufficient to cover any sport.
No, not really.
We don't have stats on that, right? Well,
We can get you that.
I do have those stats,
We
not
can-
necessarily right here,
we can
but
show
Okay.
it to you.
Okay.
yeah, that.
Yeah, I think, it'd be great if we could, I mean,
Just to
I'm sure
get an
you
idea
have
of
been,
what
but
we're- 'cause-
continue along those plans of looking at creating, how do the, that's like Lee County, I mean, I know they have a lot of different revenues, but how do they structure with coaches and things like that? How do they get their funding? How do they pay for their athletic programs?
What I've been told in the past, and they receive about $40,000 for each athletic calendar year. That reaches to about maybe the 3rd quarter academically, and then from that point on, they're given another $5,000 just to make it to the end. Now, some Lee County schools may have to dip into their gate revenue, but then again, I'm sure there's some added cost to the Lee County system that we don't necessarily have to carry, which is a huge benefit to our own athletic program.
Right.
Do they not have a lot of parents groups?
No, there are some schools, many schools out there that have athletic booster programs that we do
Right.
not have.
Right, that's,
So that's another opportunity then.
Absolutely.
Especially as it's growing, it's getting more exciting. People are starting to tap into it. The students are, I'm sure the parents will come. I mean, sports is a big thing. I mean, there's, some universities could almost pay their whole
Yeah, and
cost with just their athletic program. So I'm not suggesting that that's what we need to do here, or we could do here, but it would be really nice if we could not only migrate towards covering that cost, but even being a positive cash flow for the school in general. And also, provide the resources that we really need to have, a really good athletic, building an athletic program.
I would say, I mean, typically in a public school, you have band parents that raise money, you have sport parents that raise money, I mean, aside from your PTOs and PTAs, so, we're a small organization.
And some of the schools I know, we've just asked around, some of them charge a fee for students to play, and we really, Mr. Montag and I have had this conversation around what is the purpose of our athletic program, and certainly at the varsity level, I mean, you want students to win. In order to get to that point, then you have to have programs in place, to make sure that the students can be trained and learn and skills and all of those things. But then, as you said, it takes tools, it takes uniforms, it takes balls and
Facilities,
equipment
we don't even have facilities, yeah.
and that's where we've got to find that balance.
And I know we've lost students because we didn't have the same type of sports programs that they could get, at another, like say, high school. So being able to have these and now build on them is also going to be a retaining tool for students within the system.
For the history, for the new people, our school system was not based on athletics, and when they developed our program for high school, they originally did not really have athletics because we're an ACE program and academically related. But what they found out is when the high school opened, you got kids that weren't coming because we didn't have the sports.
Exactly.
We weren't the full STEM. So, and for another discussion, I would just ask what % of our kids apply for athletic scholarships to go to college? If it is a large number, small number, minute. So again, focus on where our money does go. And exactly, the question is how, whatever discussion you're having, is the money going to be put into athletes, or is it going to help build more of the academic? So it's a philosophical for another time.
It is philosophical, but I don't think we know that there's a small percentage of high school athletes that go on to play in college and then even smaller in pros. But I think the philosophical argument is, how do we make our students well-rounded? How do we put them in positions of leadership and challenge them and that sort of stuff, and keep them physically fit too. I mean, you
Right,
know,
that's important.
so, I mean, there are many benefits to
Right.
playing sports, and for most kids that don't go on to any higher level than high school.
And until you have a pretty strong program too, it gets a lot harder to have people go to that next level, especially in a scholarship capacity.
I know when I was in, and it's another discussion, but when I was in high school, our phys ed teacher taught lifelong activity. So we learned individual things as opposed to team, because those are, your swimming you can do, your, you know, a whole bunch of things you can do as opposed to team sports that may not continue throughout life, but your golfing and your things like that
You definitely have,
throughout your life.
you definitely have like multiple opportunities in athletics. I mean, probably the most profitable long-term life skill if you're in the business world is learning golf, because you can play that and go out if you're in the business world and do that. Swimming is an all-around great activity for the
health.
individual, for health. So there's a lot of different applications, team sports, you know, how to working with other people and that stuff. So they offer a lot of benefits in different areas.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
All I was going to point out was the final page of that document you guys received is just a quick snapshot of our athletic program as it is right now. Coaches' names, some of them which you see highlighted in red, that's to give you an example of those individuals who are not charter school staff. These are what I consider to be a vendor coach. They fill out the vendor packet, they get a check at the end of their season. So I've kind of adopted that name for them. Some of the areas that you see that are highlighted in blue, those are, I guess, a request, a hope, a wish, for those added positions that we feel are necessary to help those individual teams and programs grow. There are some individuals on here, you'll see a red V, those have been identified as a full-time volunteer, and they put in a heck of a lot of hours. You can see our athlete distribution off to the right. Some of our largest teams are our track and field and our football teams. Track and field just edging them out by a 1% difference. But as it stands right now, we have about 300, and I do have the number right here to make sure I get it correct. We have over 300 student athletes. Let me see here. Yes, as it stands right here right now, we have 307 student athletes, and that includes the sport of football. I'm not sure if any of you are aware, but right now within the FHSAA, we are an independent member of the football programs that they have to offer. So when you go to the FHSAA site, it does not reflect a true number as to what Oasis has to offer. I had to add in those numbers to include our football program, because every year when I have to submit our numbers per sport, you know, we do not compete at the 11-man game, so therefore that information is not necessary for them.
Do we not do that because of the numbers or because of funding, or what's the reason, and how do we, who do we compete against, you know, in that?
If we were to compete at the 11-man level, we would be playing teams like Avon Park, Sebring. I do believe Bishop Verot would be in there as well. But they've done a lot of realignment just recently, so those names might have changed. We did start off originally, I wanted to say when we first originated the program, as Ms. Donaldson had mentioned, you know, to get students to maintain and stay within our system, you know, we had an explosion of athletic programs. And football, of course, I believe was the final piece to the puzzle. We had almost everything else on our you know, plate right here. Football started off as a 6-man game, and at that time, I do believe it was because of numbers. And I want to say, don't have the correct year in my top of my head to say what year we started football, but if you look back, even if it was 2010, we only had 371 students within the school. Chris Terrell was the gentleman behind that. He discovered the 6-man game. There's a league within the state here. The FCAPS is what it is, the Florida Catholic Private and Parochial Schools League. So at that time when we started, there was no other option. 371 students was not going to be able to compete with, you know, a Mariner Ida Baker type of format.
At this time, we're still there, and what is the plans?
Well, we were back there actually with what it is. We originated 6-man. We made the jump to 11 for a couple years. Things didn't go as well as planned, and we saw a greater benefit to return to which is now an 8-man game, as opposed to just maintaining, trying to make an 11-man team work.
Okay.
Numbers for our students who have come out, we've had about 30 kids come out per year looking to participate in our football program, which is a varsity-only program. We do not get the benefit of a freshman or a JV squad that many of the high schools in the area get to enjoy, which that, of course, means that we have some of the younger students missing out on these opportunities because they're being thrown into a varsity-only program. Now, with the other high schools, they have that progressive, progression within their program to get a freshman ready for the varsity game. Some are already ready, but there are some that just need a little bit of extra time.
So is there, I just need to ask a question, is there a budget impact in the or, I guess,
Well, if we transition to 11-man?
Oh,
I mean, because you've already submitted your numbers.
No, this isn't,
no,
would
no,
not be
no,
for
we're not
this
looking,
year.
no, we're not looking to
would not
transition
be
to
for this
11-man,
year.
no. No, we're looking to stay within the FCAPS League for the 2016 season, and we've already taken steps to prepare for that season, so,
No heart attack.
no. Any other questions?
So, what I'm looking at is total for high school would be 32,000
Is that on the
on
front
the
page?
first page?
That's actually what we're currently at.
Okay.
That's just our current high school athletic coaching numbers. And many of them do not provide a JV or an assistant coach. And I use the sport of baseball, the season we're currently in. Right now, we have just one high school baseball coach ad pay. However, there are many other individuals out there helping our baseball program. Yeah, page 1 is current as of October 22nd, 2015. And still currently stand this way today.
We just wanted to bring it before you all because it is a $22,000 difference in request from last year to this year.
That's what I,
So that's
bottom line was
the increase in
22,000.
the 40%. We wanted to
Okay,
be able to
so-
articulate that it wasn't just, we weren't going out and building any kind of facilities or that it was a reflection of need based on officials and coaches.
Thank you.
You got it.
You need a
I'm
break?
finished.
Right, do we have a time limit on this?
No, we don't have a time limit on the room. I just didn't know if you all need, I don't know. I don't want
pushed through the
to make
last
this
two.
longer and drag out, but you might need a,
I'd really
wanna
like to
push
just push
through?
through, yeah.
Yeah, do you want to vote on it, whether we just finish this up? Does anybody need, I mean, if you need to go to the potty, go and
We have two more.
we have two more
or
presentations.
then
But they
discussion.
shouldn't be too long.
Sorry. I knew mine was going to be a little lengthy. That is all I have to present to you. That covers probably more than you wanted to know. I know, I'm getting a bad name. I know I am. I apologize. All right, thank you.
Okay. Ready? Okay. Yes, I will. I'll talk plenty fast. Food service budget costs are primarily made up of two things, either my staff or food. That makes over 96% of my total budget. As far as personnel, I have no... You okay? As far as personnel, I have no position changes. Any increase you see there is either due to the fact that my staff, a lot of my staff got benefits in January for the first time, and next year will reflect a full year of benefits and the salary increases. So that's it from the personnel standpoint. Next is operating expenses, which 95% of that is food purchases. We are projecting to keep food costs within 4% of this year's budget, but since it is such a large number, that will equate to about $25,000. I'm also going to be increasing repairs by more than 10% because as the equipment gets older, we just need to repair it more, and each time they come out, it is more expensive. So that's an increase of about $3,000. The other area I'm increasing is small equipment by over 10%. I have budgeted $3,000 at each school, and my main concern is areas are warmers, and at the high school is a salad cooler. And for a lot of you guys are new, our kitchens were originally warming kitchens. They are very minimum in size and very minimum in equipment. So if I have a piece of equipment go down, I have to repair it or replace it because we have nothing else. We don't have a couple freezers, we don't have a couple of ovens and stuff like that. So it's important for me to put that stuff in there. If we don't need it, we won't go purchase it just to purchase it, but we do want to make sure we have it in there because then I'm scrambling trying to find money. We are for sure going to be purchasing a salad cooler for Oasis Elementary because what we want to do this year is we want to pilot offering the salads and sub combos that we do at the middle and high school. We want to do that at Oasis Elementary and kind of see how that goes. So we will be purchasing a salad cooler for that. The last area is the capital, and as you can see, the big ticket item is a steam table for Krista. Again, this is going to be an item where we will only purchase it if we need to, but it is an older piece of equipment, and it's the only steam table we have. So if it goes down, I have nothing to run the line. So we want to make sure we kind of put that in there, have it set aside in case something does go down this year. A steam table, when you go through the line, it actually heats the food or it keeps the other part cool. And each school only has one. Christus is the oldest. We've already had issues. We've had them come in and repair it a couple times. So we're just at the point where I went and got quotes. Even to repair them are expensive. To do one little steam table, one little bin is like $1,200. So I know, about 10,000. Yeah, I've got a quote for that, and that's, under 10,000 delivered. I know this equipment is not cheap, so it does last. Chris has been open, 10 years, and they've used it the entire time, but that's it. We only have the one line. So that's kind of earmarked. Again, we won't go out and purchase it just to purchase it, but if it goes down, I do want to make sure we have it there because we will need to get it. And that pretty much is my budget. I know.
Good job.
No questions?
A little too long.
Yeah. No questions? Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, the first budget we will look at is custodial. If you look, you can see that we have a negative 6.95% change. A lot of that is the Florida League of Cities. We had a reduction of insurance premiums. We buy our janitorial supplies from UniFirst and Supply Works. But we found out after we did this process that we are now going to have to pay flood insurance, which could be approximately $32,000 to $35,000. And within custodial, we also figured 3% increase for utilities. If you look at the maintenance budget, differences from 2016. We had $18,000 for our field, which was given to us by the foundation, but Ms. Munoz had to put money in a spot for that. So that was in there for last year. We also had the coils at Krista, which cost approximately $40,000, approximately $40,000. So Krista has gone substantially down for this next year. We also had to add to our mowing contract the mowing of the athletic field. They were the lowest bidders by far, and we have been very impressed with the job they've done so far. It's in the Brickman. It will be listed under Brickman in high school. Building maintenance. So under the high school for Brickman, you will see substantially more money for the high school.
The high school is 41810.
It's approximately $6,000 to fertilize and cut for the year. As far as building maintenance goes, obviously we mentioned earlier about roofs. Currently, I met with a gentleman from the city, Derek Frazier, who is going to retire in October, but he shared a wealth of knowledge with me. All of our roofs for installers are out of warranty. For manufacturers, they are still in warranty, most 15 to 20 years. The issue becomes, though, when they come out, they have to make a determination whether it's warranty work or not. So to give you an example, Oasis Elementary's roof is not in good shape. Recently we had them come out. We had a $450, close to $500 bill that we had to pay, but we're going to have a larger bill that fell under warranty, and that's really with the help of Derek Frazier, that he's able to work with those people. He's worked with them a long time. So that will continue to be an issue. Also, the roof at Krista is probably the next roof that's not in the best of shape. We put money in for carpet because it seems as if, just like this school year when we have the health inspector come out, we had 5 rooms that she has deemed that need to be replaced. So we've got a bid on carpet. Mr. Hook and I have talked. He had a bid from someone to come in and do an epoxy floor for 2 rooms for $9,700, which is expensive. So I guess the debate will become in the years to come, should we have no carpet and have linoleum or epoxy or something else? I can tell you a district I just came from, they had ceramic tile and carpet, and they're replacing it all with linoleum. Also, each year, Paul Prestipice, our maintenance person, we put in money for compressors because we don't know with our HVAC systems that those compressors can go down. The last 2 years, Paul has been able to repair those. All 4 of our maintenance guys are outstanding, probably some of the best I've ever worked with in 34 years. And they are able to fix things and save our district money that you just wouldn't believe. And every time they do, I usually send an email to Mr. Stevenson and to Mary Ann so they know about it. That's pretty much it we are asking to purchase a gator. With the field and with a lot of things the maintenance guys do, they are lucky that Mr. Hook and his crew at Oasis Elementary bought him a golf cart, which we use a lot. We used it a lot even doing our athletic field in the back. But we also have asked this year they would like to have a gator, which would be a big help for us. A gator is like a mule. I call it a mule, but yeah.
4-wheel drive.
Yeah.
A really nice golf cart. Really.
Yeah. That is everything on maintenance. With transportation, the cost of diesel fuel has been much less this year. And the other difference in transportation is part of the school year, in November, Ms. Gallion and myself were called to a meeting at Lee County. Last year, I guess they had decided they could not keep our buses stored over there, so right now we store them at Krista and over on the Oasis campus. But they had decided that they were having problems getting our work done, and we have to inspect buses once every 30 days. So we are now just getting fuel and tires from them, and we have hired another person who had worked at Wallace, who has worked on a lot of our buses for warranty work, and he is doing all of our maintenance, and he is less per hour. Also, we're not being charged a 5% upcharge on parts, which we were before. And that's all. Okay.
Okay, do we? So now you've heard the presentations in their whole. One of the things that, let me just get these. One of the things that's a task in front of us now is some feedback from you based on where we are. And when Mr. Zakovic asked earlier, where I'm falling, in a dream world, I want it all. One of the realities is for our staff, the raise and the salaries are huge. Those are things that are make a statement directly to say we are interested in your value and there is value for you. But at the same time, the positions, and as they've been defended by or discussed by the principals, they have some severe merit. So then we go to our expansion monies and Krista and the $50,000 we put away at each school. So it's more or less now a conversation that I'm really looking for your feedback into, and with principals' input as well, based on where we should head and what kind of direction that you think we need to get to. Yes, Mr.
Before we go there, I guess, from your office and your staff, last year I know we added Todd, and I guess I was hoping to see his salary in here, but it's not. So I guess they've asked for things, and we have staff needs. In your office, is there anything you can do budgetary, either Do you have too many people? Do you have not enough people? What's the status?
Right. At this point right now, the only addition that I'm looking for is, and again, it's not I don't know how you much call it an addition, but Miss Penny Faulkner, who's working on our websites and design for our websites and being paid a para salary. She's the only person that I'm looking for with her same salary intact, which is not high enough in any means for any of our staff.
So is that going to be because I thought that was not going to be a move from Krista McAuliffe. It is going to be a move from?
It would be a move from Krista McAuliffe, yes.
Okay.
Now, is she doing that now?
She's doing that now.
So it's kind of
She started
been
that.
kind of temporarily moved over, and
Mhm.
then
But-
you want to make that a regular
Right,
thing, which
absolutely.
I see the need too in that area.
But in terms of within my own office staff, one of the things that's brought up is there is a lot of fixed cost, and unfortunately, there are things that are just, the margins are not big. I've done some analysis just to give you an idea. We're about the 55th biggest school district in the state. To give you an idea, we're larger than 12 different school districts, the whole of the 67 counties. So we are big now, and certainly, do we need more staff in the administrative office? No, not really. But then you start to say, well, do you want new staff? Well, as a grant writer out of my office, that would come from 4 schools. So no matter what we would do, it would be pulling from the 4 schools. So in terms of adding anything additional in my office, there's nothing at all. The only intent is to save some money on the rent.
And I'm glad we're not adding anybody additional, but have we been able to find any efficiencies with adding Todd last year in terms of, we have, under Todd, we've got the bus person, we have several positions. Do we?
Well, absolutely. Here's what I'd tell you. My defense of that, if it's that, is that we haven't been in the news. When I got here beforehand, we were in the news based on needing buses. We've got the buses there. We now potentially could have been. There were some other charter schools that didn't handle their inspections the way they should, basically Lee County, and quite frankly, I'm going to say it, the school system said, we can't house your buses anymore. So with the guidance from him, and what I said was, I want every bus to make sure they're inspected, period. That is a potential, just a news story, regardless of dollar amount. That's a news story that could have happened, because what he's done is visited with Lee County. We figured out a way. He's found another vendor to do what, in essence, was being done before. There's a lot of those kind of scenarios when we look at our technology as well.
So because of the buses, I know for me, I have a hard time understanding. We have somebody who's supposed to be handling our transportation, but we have Todd who's doing, it sounds like he's doing most of it. What am I missing?
Mark Scotty does most of it. On a day-to-day basis, every day at 6:15, she's outside in front of the school. She probably deals with, and I don't want to misrepresent, I can tell you the first 3 weeks of school, it's about 80 calls a week of just parents with issues.
Okay.
She probably is dealing with, I usually meet her at 6:30 every morning out front, and we have these discussions. She probably is dealing with anywhere between 10 and 30 calls a week, with either dealing with parents, issues with field trips, someone forgets to order a bus, someone took the van that they shouldn't have, and she's at a wedding in West Palm Beach on a Saturday night, and she's on her phone finding a bus and a driver. Those are so many things that she does that people don't see.
Right.
In a district, I go back to the 55th largest school district in the state of Florida. There's districts a lot smaller than us that have.
Okay.
I'd say directly to you, take an example of the field. If it wasn't for Todd being out there and other assistants, quite frankly, it would be my time. And so there's a lot of those kind of things. I mean, I could go example after example of things that are helping our system tremendously that don't have a dollar value. How do you place a dollar value on, making sure that the grass doesn't die? That there's no real value for that. But so in terms of the size of my office, if you will, we're looking at the possibility of one position possibly being lowered to half-time is a possibility. But again, I don't want to promise anything that I couldn't do. But so we're looking at every opportunity within our system. I'll give you another great example of where the math is flawed a little bit in our system is that, the conversation was, we have 4 different schools, and, whatever we do comes out of their budget, and it happens for transportation, maintenance, tech, all those things. But also what happens, and you heard earlier, is when there's some revenue gain that goes into internal funds, and I'm fine with that, and that's the way it should be. But when we talk about transporting kids, that's all out of all 4 schools' transportation. So in other words, there are these fixed costs that I don't have any control over. So in terms of if they add a new schedule, a new JV team now that needs new transportation, that also is just like those fixed costs that are complained about. Those are the things that add to the overall budget. It comes out of all four. It doesn't come out of one school's line item. So, and I don't certainly hope we don't get into the point in the system where we start to say, well, this was mine and this, because that's what happens when we if anything, need to move towards we are a system, and we need to look at, and that's why I think the conversation about the computers was a good one, and I wanted you to feel that, is because it's great. What if somebody has a great idea and it's working for them? Well, then we need to, as a system, and they're really doing that now, is to look at, okay, does this work for everybody across all four schools? And it's good for the principals now to see the cost and the teams that are here across all four schools. Because in a world, you say, I'm adding one teacher, it's not a big deal. I'm adding two teachers, it shouldn't be a big deal. But when you look at it as almost $400,000, it becomes a bigger deal across four schools. That doesn't mean that they don't deserve the positions or need those positions, because I think that they've given you a lot of good reasons why they should get them. But I think this is a first where we start to look at it as the system top. So in terms of my office, no, quite frankly, there probably wouldn't be anything except possibly a reduction in half of one. And that's to come if we can figure out if that can work or not. But otherwise, there's no anticipation of adding anything new except, when we, like with Jackie, as I want to piggyback on Jackie talking about a coach, an academic, or, an academic reading coach. Those are the kind of things that if we really want to be serious about it in our system, do we want at some point down the road a secondary coach that deals with middle and high school issues, that talks to the elementary coach, and they talk together and do it? Because right now, every time they're having meetings, it's all the principals getting together. So now who's in their building, just like we're looking at today, who's in the buildings controlling. So do I need to add those now? Do we need those? No, but I want that conversation to start thinking about, are we big enough as a system to start saying, who's going to manage our IT? Who's going to manage these things that are as we got so big? So no complaints about it, but I want you to kind of see that Jackie's getting potentially these coaches, which is wonderful. But I also see who's going to make sure that coach now works with the middle school, and what transition piece could we have? So is there a value of having, a halftime coach at both middle and high school added as well? Those are the kind of big picture things that I wanted to be brought up in here. So.
When we look at the future going forward, it seems like capacity-wise, from facility standpoint anyway, we're pretty much maxed out across the board. Do we plan to get larger? And if we do plan to get larger, how do we approach that, and what will we need to look at now going forward to do that?
Two revenue streams are student growth. The second one is business opportunities and grants. Those are the kind of the way that I look at that. So in our strategic plan, we said we're going to hold off for a while. We'll have another strategic plan, and that will be, I think, the best place for that kind of conversation, because I don't want to kind of say that now. But to go back to what we're asking for, $500,000 to be put away for Krista McAuliffe. I mean, right now I could tell you we could take care of everything by saying, let's just take the Krista McAuliffe $500K off. I mean, that's a true option. Okay, that's something that could happen. We've just eliminated a problem. Now our budget looks better, and we're good to go. But we also can't be short-sighted in that with what she needs for just 4 classrooms, it may cost $2.2 million, or it may cost 2.5, it may cost 1.5. But we're not anticipating building just 4 more classrooms. It will probably be 4 or 6 more or 8, just kind of like the rent that I talked about for where we're heading. We're always going to be looking for revenue sources. So that is a potential growth that, quite frankly, that's why the $500K to me is kind of vital. Not only do we mention it in the strategic plan, but that will get us revenue down the road. So it's almost like saving for later down the road.
And
so
that's kind of where I was getting at. Sometimes when you can relate dollars to not being expense, but being to an investment. And that I was saying, if we're looking at taking care of that, are we just taking care of fixing a Band-Aid that we've had there for a long time, or are we actually looking at the expansion and being able to grow because of these investments? And, when you start something like that in process, sometimes it's a lot cheaper to do more than just the minimum. And that's why I'm wanting to make sure we're thinking in the big picture, in these kind of things.
And we're looking at the situation we're in now. We're looking at $1.15 million just in either set-asides or things we had to do because it wasn't there previously. And again, there was a lot of hard work to get here. So none of this, I don't want to be construed as I'm saying what happened before, well, it's their fault. That's not at all my intent. But when you're talking about $450,000 expense that they haven't had before because technology got to the point where it was, when you're talking about $500,000 for Krista, and then you're talking about $200,000 we put away for just technology in the classroom, which, as Ms. Treese said, $10,000 just for STEM in one classroom is hardly anything. So we're not even addressing the bigger growth issue. That's over $1 million this year that we're actually taking, and I think being strategic about looking down the road, but it's painful now. And so that's, so the answer is we could drop those things. I could drop the $200,000, which is $50,000 to each school. We could get everything else we want, and we still maintain the budget. That's another option. So we can look at the salaries as well. So this is where I really wanted as much feedback from you all on what direction you think that we should head in and where we should go. And principals have the same right. We had a conversation on Friday talking about salaries. And the conversation came that maybe the 5 and 6 is a little bit too high. Maybe it's not. Those are the conversations that are vital.
Where did where did the 5 or 6 come from? Is Lee County's not giving a 6% raise this
Right.
year?
5 or 6% is my idea down the road a long time ago, because all I hear and all I've heard from staff is that the feeling is, for a variety of reasons, either they got skipped on the pay scale, or over time there's a feeling that they didn't get the right experience, or over time there's a variety of reasons. The rationale for should it be that much, it could be lower, but as always.
But what we found after you researched their salaries, we found we're not that far off from Lee County. As far off as it's.
We're not that far off from Lee County, but then we go back to the strategic plan, and do we want to retain, hire, recruit, and do we want to be, okay, so if we're not far from Lee County, do we want to be above Lee County? And that's a philosophical, I could make that answer myself, but do we want to have it where we are saying, okay, you are getting paid, period, across the board, every position more than Lee County? We're pretty much, in most cases, close to it or there. So I just want to make sure that I still advocate for the staff, because that's what I heard from day one. I've been here a little over a year, and pay is never enough. And so I don't want to just use the competition and say, well, we're right underneath, so we're good enough. Maybe we go a little bit more, but it's tough discussion. That's the
I
problem.
was going to say, personally, if you have happy teachers
Yeah.
and quality teachers, you have happy kids. So giving them the 5 and 6%, teachers across the nation are underpaid, period. So, that's my priority, to be put it into teacher funding. We've lost teachers because of pay, and we've lost very good teachers due to pay.
Right. And I would invite at this time too, any principals have a comment. I want input is the bottom line. I don't want to be sitting somewhere saying this is all that I feel about.
when you look at the whole scenario, it's not just true in education, but it's true there as well as anywhere else. Pay is obviously a factor. It's the primary, maybe not the primary for some, but for the most part, it's a big reason why you go to work, right? So, and in comparison of that, also it's environment, how you feel about where you're at, what kind of difference, it's other support structures, how excited are you about what you're doing, what you're able to accomplish, or what you're not able to accomplish. So what we really need to look at, especially when it comes to retaining teachers, is the big picture. And of course, compensation is a part of that picture. But we got to make sure we're doing what's right on the other side, or we're not going to be able to pay enough to do that. So both of them. But I like the idea, theoretically, that we could be at or above our competition in Lee County. And I think that's on the just the base level, especially if we're recruiting teachers in. That's the first thing they're going to look at, because they don't have the experience. But so, I think pay is very important, and that we need to look at how to be in a competitive spot. But we also need to look at the whole picture of that too.
I'd like to just fill in some of the blanks before we start talking about what we might want to cut or where we're going and stuff like that. I guess we talked about a couple of different, you sent us an email with where we might be saving on the technology in the software company that's going to volunteer to make us use us as a pilot program. Okay.
Unfortunately, it's not a savings, though. There was zero cost for that software already. What happened is we lost an employee that built that program, and it's old anyway, so there's no gain. It would have been a potential cost. You see what I mean? But we're not saving.
But can we that's not something that we can combine with Schoology. Schoology would still
No,
be.
Unfortunately, this is going to, no, it's a separate thing. Yeah, unfortunately, we looked at that. Yeah, I wish we could, so.
And Jackie, your program, and you had a software program as well. Let me find yours.
Yeah, those don't have much to do with like the CSAD's replacement. The CSAD's
So that was an internal
yes,
thing?
sir. That's
Okay.
an internal thing. It has
Okay,
nothing
good.
really to do. Their individuals is more academic-oriented software, and I support all the requests that they're asking
Okay.
for those. Those make sense.
Internal funds or things like we hear, our ACE program got back $600,000. It was budgeted at $400,000. So to me, there's $200,000 out there. So where does that go?
That goes right to the high school.
Is that correct?
That's not split into 4 schools, so that's into the high school. Am I correct,
Okay.
Mary Ann? Is that correct? Yeah.
So,
in their budget, in their overall budget. None of that money, none of their ACE money is divided into the 4 schools. That ACE money specifically goes right back to the high school. Now, the difference is with a 5 or 6% raise and then adding 3 whatever the number of teachers is and some other expenses, that's where but no, all that money goes directly to there. That's not shared.
Okay. So the other internal funds, maybe this is more for Mary Ann, where can we see that in the budget?
You won't,
I personally don't report on internal funds. I don't believe that we're required to do any reporting on internal funds.
Okay.
I don't deal with internal at all.
Okay. So fundraisers, those fundraisers come from the PTOs, right? So those dollars also aren't in our budget.
Right.
And one of the things I was thinking about, just in terms of looking at additional streams of income, obviously if we can get the county, that would be fantastic, but when we look at fundraisers, we pay a percentage of our, whatever we collect to those fundraising companies. And where do those percentages run? Sometimes it's a good bit, right? 20, 30, 40%?
and things like that. About 40%.
We were talking to some folks, and if we've got this web page, we've got our needs, if we can fundraise smarter and have our parents understand, hey, your dollars, when you buy a candle, 40% of that or something is going towards someplace else. It's not all going back to the school. If we can create, we have some coaches that are starting to talk about boosters in the football program, Liam Corley, which I love, he's got the same energy Ms. Treese does. If we can get smarter on some of those things where, if we have this webpage person now, we can have some of our parents do think of it as a quasi-private school because of the quality education we're providing our kids. So why not? And they're happy to put their money where their students are. If we can help there and have some of those fundraising dollars come right to us as opposed to.
I'll give you a great example, and this is why it's hard sometimes because in the position I'm in, it may look short-sighted and you may not see the revenue stream from it, but let's take a paraprofessional position, which is the one I'm asking to bring to my office. So then it looks on the surface like, oh my gosh, that's not kid-centered, and why are we spending less than $20,000 pay? It's much less than that in a position, right, to do our website. Well, first of all, the website itself, just hiring a company out there can cost quite a bit of money, but beyond that, that person now, and I talked to Mr. Winstead earlier today about this, there's an opportunity for that person to be now in charge of just exactly what you're talking about, which is business partnerships. Take the Sandoval 10% coupon at Woody's is a great example. Let's make a list for our employees. We have 10,000 people. When you look at our students, our parents, all the people that relate to the school, what if we could put that on there and that company would pay us a flat fee to be on our website, but they get a 10% coupon, whatever it might be, a card. Well, that can all be managed there. Another example, Vivian Terrio has made already about a month and a half ago, by the way, a video that I've asked her to put together, which is all about our field and raising money. Starts out with the kids in high school. They're running. They can't play because there's rocks. They fall down and, we need a field. It's really good. Brian Montag's in it talking about the history. I'm in it talking about the history where we want to be. Okay, so now it's sitting there. Now who puts it together? Because part of the problem I have in my general area is we've got it ready. Now, who links that to the website? Who figures out what credit card company we use to allow the authorization, to get and that's where that little bit of assistance, so that little, what I would say an investment of $17,000 of a para position, if you will, is going to most likely offshoot way more funds down the road, and that's why it's there. But on the surface, it's tough, and that's no different than renting that building where, you look at adding 20 kids, $140,000 is basically what we're going to get for FEFP. You subtract out $60,000 for the teacher's salary, we're at $80,000 positive. Then you put the $50,000 in rent, we've come up $30,000 positive for the system, but yet it looks like on the surface and to a staff member, oh my gosh, they're building a building. Well, that's not the case. And so we're to that point where I believe we have to start saying we're either going to invest and do these things that are going to get us to where we need to be, and that's support of the principal's positions. I mean, those things that they're doing, I'm in full support. Even the fact, and keep in mind, that we've lowered the reserve requirement. I mean, we were looking before at 2 or 3 months. None of this would have even been possible if we hadn't looked at it doing it by percentages. So if there's anything that I'm advocating for taking care of our staff members, and I don't mean that it has to be 5 or 6. I mean, would I like that? Yes. And then I want, from your all's direction, okay, if we don't put all that money in Krista, or we don't put the money in 50,000 per school to start looking at PD development and start looking at technology, then I just want you all to know that we're on the same page. And 2 years from now, I don't want anybody to look back and say, oh my gosh, Stevenson was dumb. 2 years ago, we should have put away for Krista. Why are we doing it now? Or 2 years ago, we should have planned on more PD because they're going to need it. So what do we do? And so that's where we are with this. I mean, is it a matter of one administrative position that might save us $20,000 part-time? Okay, yes, it can, and that's $20,000 to go to the pot. But at the same point, we have to start thinking about how we can earn more money and how we can actually get our system to be concrete together. You're going to find with advanced ed, that's what they're going to say across the board, I can guarantee it. Policies, procedures are different at every school, and that's okay, except that we need some consistency. And that goes with the financial house as well. And that's why the internal audit coming up is going to be a huge help, because that's what that will do, is put everything into proper structure, I believe, so.
So I guess so we're missing a piece in terms of, you've got some plans that aren't in here. For example, Jackie's position, it wouldn't be adding anybody to the well, it might
would
be adding a
'cause
different type of person,
Right,
but it's
right.
not the full cost that
Right,
she would be adding. So
Absolutely, right,
that
right.
makes that
Yes, sir.
coach, at least one of those coaching positions, easier, right? What I would like to see is, we've got this nice summary on each of the ones, and we've got Mariana, you have on 2017 revenues, expenditures, reserves required. Then we got to back out from the school, the 50,000 for technology, and for Krista McAuliffe anyway, $500,000 for tech expansion. So that leaves 257. But then what I'd also like to see, I guess, of that 257, and I guess I could do it, how much of that is the salary increase?
The salary increase altogether combined, sorry, I filed my paperwork. It was a little over 600,000 right now, sitting that way.
For all four
schools, yes.
schools, $600,000?
It was, what I did was I took, I think there were about 144 employees that have been there, over.
And that's okay, but because again, this is we're not going to solve this today, but for moving forward, if we can get, for me anyway, I'd like, and I can ask you offline as well, what does that number look like? Then we can get down to what are the principals actually asking for, because this number is bloated right now by the salary raises, which it's not their choice.
Well, but it's $378,000 is what they're asking for all the schools. And then it's about, we budgeted, what, $60,000 per position? Is that correct, or a little bit?
Yeah, with overhead, each position's probably gonna run about 57,000.
Per position, so each position that you were looking at. But we can give,
57,000.
we can give you a number, we can give you exactly what you're asking for too. But yeah, that total, so to give you an idea, the raise is somewhere around 700,000, 750 at 5 and 6%. But the total
Is it,
positions are
is it 750 or is it 600?
Oh, I'm sorry, it's 638, 932 is what I.
638.
Six.
Total cost of the raise.
With at the high end where we are right now. That's, yes,
That's the
5 and 6.
And
And then the positions total are 378,000, if I remember correct, yeah.
Do we get any increases in revenue year over year on our main funding?
Well, $140-something this year potentially, but it's never a lot. And this year, I think there's a lot of complaints by public education as well, because it's about 1%. When you look at the increase of what they've done, it's penny ante. There's hardly anything to it. So unless it comes from capital, we're not. And again,
I was just gonna say, have any of our parents been surveyed to do grant writing?
no, not at this point.
Hours or time?
But that's an opportunity we can certainly look into. That's not.
I'm sure there's somebody in all our schools that either has knowledge of somebody that could write grants or customers.
Right, I know. Well,
Do we have any idea on that same line, do we have any idea with other schools that employ a grant writer, what kind of revenues
Right.
are available? What's
we've done it everywhere I've been.
average, what's high, and
See, a regular school, that's where I was trying to get with the size. A regular school district is going to have a grants writing, federal grant and a regular grant, state grant writer in-house. That's where I said we got to look at it. We're 55th biggest system now. So we're not tiny anymore, but that also means we don't need to spend a whole bunch of money either. So what I,
I mean, obviously the goal of that would be a return on investment. It would be, there's certain things that are kind of like overhead, and there's certain things that create revenues. So that would be one that would create revenues.
and I know that people have to go, but I just wanted to say for the board's purposes, if I can get some feedback on your kind of your feeling of where we are, that'd be wonderful. But I didn't know if any principals have any, because I wanted them to have an opportunity just to say. So this is a great place. I don't know if any of them want to have a say, because I don't want anybody to feel like they're left out of the process. So just real fast, because I know.
I just have a comment to make about the raises for teachers. It is about money. Money is important. Yes, we provide a great environment for them, but we've got to make sure that they're getting an equitable salary. You know, you're a single mom with 3 kids. You're living very close to the poverty line. As a teacher making, you know, high 30s. I think it's important that we reward the teachers that have been there the longest, because every year what we have tended to do is increase the starting salary for younger teachers, or for step 1 and 2 teachers. Brand new teacher, they started at $32,000 back in 2006. Now we're up to $38,000, $40,000. When the teachers that have started in 2006 that were making $32,000 that have skipped steps, the new teacher's salaries and the 10-year employee salary are getting to be very similar. That does not make you feel like you're valued and worthwhile. We've got to focus on those few people, and there aren't that many left, but there still are some that need to have a boost in salary because they're loyal. They've been here for 6 to 10 years. They've worked hard. We need to show that we value them. So my proposal, which is a compromise, because I do want to add new employees. I think we need that as well. I'd like to suggest that we consider 6% for the folks that have been here 6 years or longer. I know that my school, it's 12 people. I think at Oasis Elementary, it's maybe 18 people, and we've been around the longest. So we're not talking 50% of the population. We're talking about a very small percent. And then I think the new folks that have come in, years 1, 2, 3, 4, I think a 2% raise would be equitable. I think it's giving them something. I think it'll catch them up very quickly to where Lee County is paying their new teachers. But our focus should be on the ones that have been here and loyal for the last 6 to 10 years. Okay?
Thank
I
you
think
very
it's really
much.
important.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that, Kevin Brown. I just wanted to add to that a lot of teachers that if they've been here 10 years or so, they've lost 8 years equitable salary. So just to add it to what Jackie was saying, I was even thinking even 2%, 5%. That would save $400 off the 6%. That would then save from the 5%, it would save almost $1,200. We're talking $1,600 in saving. That we'd knock off probably $200-some thousand off the current budget that we're kind of looking at. So that would put us under that benchmark. What was it, 170 something? So I think then we can maybe go ahead and go about that. So that was just something I kind of wanted to add to that as well.
Can we get more information individually from the schools, what the lowest salary is? Not with names, but just with the lowest salary, the highest salary.
Absolutely.
And then what Jackie's.
You can see the numbers.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Years, we have both.
for instance, we have a teacher at Krista that's been there 10 years. She's making 41 something, so the low 41s. And we have teachers who have been working there 3 years making almost the exact same amount. She's been in the system for 10 plus years. So yeah, we just kind of wanted to bring that up.
Here, and I'm not sure if I'm reading it right, but it says 10 years under current salary is 46,691.
That if the economy was great from 2005 on, we would be there. But there were so many freezes.
There are some people that,
It's the employees who have been here 8, 10 years, 7 to 10 years. That have been.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
got that email too yesterday.
But yeah, there was that. But then it's the people that have been here the longest that have been frozen out. There was probably 4 or 5 years. There was no anything, maybe a bonus.
And that's why when Rob, you asked about the high percentage, I feel like that there, even if we're higher or lower, that there just was a lot of years where they just didn't, for those veterans, didn't get where they needed to be. So that's where the number came from. It wasn't a.
I think, it sounds to me, in prior to this meeting, doing the research, and also though, we've got different schools with different, I mean, some folks are compensated quite nicely because of how they were hired in the past.
Correct.
Where some weren't. So I don't think, we don't have enough information. Yeah, the board doesn't have enough information. I think everybody has to see what, if you've not done your own homework as a board member, I recommend you sit with some of the principals and see what some of their staff are making in a variety of different areas.
Also, if we could
They already get a
Yeah,
stipend for that?
They get a $2,500 stipend for that.
You want the number? Sure, we can do that.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry, you were shaking your head like stipends don't matter. How do you guys look at stipends?
What do you mean stipend?
Not that they don't matter, that they don't factor into
It's
this.
just a $2,500.
It's already
So
paid, and
it's
that's
already
what
paid
we
every
match
single year. So when you renew your contract or whatever, and you get your 1% or whatever raise, that $2,500 and is then added
So
onto
in
that. It's
addition-
not part of your actual base salary.
Right, and the percentage we're talking about is an increase on the base salary.
Correct.
We're not changing anything with ad pays.
Nope.
We're not, and then we're not going back to anybody that was hired with a favorable deal in the past. Now, we understand, I think, hopefully we understand as a board that moving forward, we're gonna be more systematic in how we hire folks. So we don't have this issue moving. Right.
You get a raise across the board. You can't tell one person who's doing pretty well that they can't have the raise when they've been working 6 years versus somebody else. I mean, that was an administrative issue years ago that it's out of our control.
We can't correct that now.
Can't correct
in your
that.
opinion. Okay.
But there are
You
many
could,
that
you
are.
probably could do something, and I'm not suggesting it's the right way to go about it, but you could say that it's this percentage or at least this much, that type of thing. So if someone was really hired much higher than the norm across the
We
board.
do that already. We
You
give
know, you
them,
could say it's 4% or 5% or whatever it is, up to this amount, and then,
you're topped out.
yeah,
There's
just for
not-
that cycle, not topped out, but for that one particular raise.
That raise.
Yeah,
They're
because we don't
definitely-
want to push somebody that's very at the top of the schedule, push them that much more up above everybody else
Right.
to bring the other ones up, and then the other one is still way up here, because you're pushing them up at the same time.
And when we talked about the salary schedule, the one thing that I wanted you all to see that I think is valuable is if we look at this as a salary schedule, meaning we leave people where they are, but we look at adopting the Lee County School schedule, what that will highlight to people is for our staff members, let's say whatever raise we decide to go with, if I'm here 10 years and I'm making 44 now or whatever the raise might be, then I can look on this and say, well, wait a minute, if I did leave to go to Lee, regardless of the 2-for-1 or whatever, I'm actually getting more, it will be hard sell on one hand because they're going to say, well, I had a salary schedule that said I got more before, but my response is, but you didn't ever get more because we just said we didn't have the money to do it. So I'd rather give a reasonable salary schedule and then look at what's left over every year, what percentage, and that's what we talk about, so.
I like that. The other thing we do, and from an all practical standpoint, I totally get where we've been slow, but it's really, there's hardly anybody that hasn't been slow. I mean, all the other industries, all other things, it's not just the teaching in the public sector that's not gotten
Right.
raises. Nobody has, and a lot of them went way down. So just collectively, we gotta balance that whole thing out and say, if they weren't picked on, but I agree that if we have the resources to bring them up, because everybody's behind
Right.
the curve really in pay, I think, over the last 10 years.
And in thinking of the question,
We can to bring it up, not only competitive, but fair and
I'm sorry.
progressive.
And in thinking of the question where Mr. Zakovic asked me where did those percentages come from, Mr. Zakovic, I remember now. We talked about with the city, they got a 5%, so we were trying to match what the city did. That's where it just hit my brain. I wanted to ask if there's any other administrators, because really this is supposed to be an opportunity for people to have a say. So I don't want, in other words, nobody to say that they didn't have a chance to say or express or whatever. Is there anybody nobody, at this point, nobody wants to talk at all, I'm sure. But if they do, they're more than welcome to, because this is the opportunity for that discussion as well, so. Absolutely, and I'm looking for feedback. That's the bottom line, so that we can bring next month to you something as we start to look at that more. So, honest feedback is all. Long process, but
Informative, and that's the nature of this situation.
absolutely. So, can I sum up just finally though and tell you what I'd be looking for? What I'm looking for is the highest raise that we can give, the highest raise based on the numbers that you all are agreeable to. I'm looking for support for the positions that the principals are asking for. So the highest raise we can get the support. And the only area that I think that there's any wiggle room, and as long as we're all in agreement, is the $500,000 for Krista has to stay, in my opinion. We're not doing a good job if we don't do that. But the $50,000 we slated to each school for technology, it is a drop in the bucket. That is to me, between that and the raises are the two areas where I feel like there's some wiggle room. So I just wanted you to know that I was asked directly, and that's I think the positions that they're asking for, I absolutely support. I mean, for the most part. Is there one or here or there, maybe or maybe not? That's a different thing. But Otherwise, it's the salaries and the $200,000 that we're putting away.
I just want to confirm one more time, because I find it hard to do a budget without having all the numbers. And I'm still caught up on the internal funds issue. And I want to confirm what I just heard, because I think it was just different from what I've heard in the past. For example, when the funds come back for ACE again, Ms. Treese is going to have use of those dollars when those are paid.
They would be added into the high school's revenue, because the ACE program is a high school program.
I get it.
Okay. So when they come back,
And that is general fund. We're solely here for general fund. We're nothing to do with internal fund.
So when we, the definition, when you're saying general and you're saying internal, general is,
General is
the
the
overall revenue coming in and then how that's spent.
Right.
And what is the is internal broken down?
Like,
Based on fundraising.
right.
And fundraising, that's how we.
That's, yeah, and they're directed at the schools level. We don't really start to say you've got to give us this or that from internal funds.
so these ACE funds, so I think we're changing, yeah, I'd like to hear that conversation as well.
I'm going to enter a conversation that's probably not mine to enter. But traditionally, that ACE money, if we're ever audited under ACE,
Has to go to the ACE program.
is to go specifically for that program. And it has entered into a more generalized sifting. And so Mrs. Treese and Amanda have asked that it be more specific to high school program, right? Okay,
Right.
to that point.
So are we, Mr. Stevenson, are we making, is that what I'm hearing today, that we're making that change?
Conversation, yes.
And I mean, I agree with a lot of what Jackie said, but my thinking, being that I'm closer to the end of my career, is different to this degree. Is it's not the short-term gain, it's the long-term sustainability. And, you know, teachers do deserve more pay across the board, but if you're going into reserves to make that happen,
Right.
in 5 years, there might not be a place for them to be having a job at. And so that's pretty aggressive. But point is that there has to be a fine balance in there. And so I highly recommend that we keep it balanced to some degree. That why I would love to have 5 or 6% across the board. I think her numbers are pretty realistic.
And I'll give you my 2 cents in terms of the, are we? All right.
Shannon just wanted me to explain what happens with when this year, for instance, Shannon's gonna be getting, an additional $177,000 associated with her. She budgeted the 429, it came in at whatever it was, 638. So what is ultimately gonna end up happening is when I do the budget amendment and I bring it forth, I'm going to tell you that I'm going to be increasing her revenue line for the ACE dollars, and I'm going to increase that by the $177,000. What ultimately has always happened is any of those funds that we receive back from ACE for the diplomas and the passing tests and whatnot, that has always gone back into as being part of her budget. It's
Right.
never been given to her now that she came in 177,000, that she has 177,000 to spend now. That's not how it's been. How it's been is it now helps offset even further the money that she's spending to provide those ACE programs. Because as part of the ACE program, she has her teachers, her teacher salaries that teach the ACE. She has her supplies, she has her, the fees that we just paid last month, I believe it was, for 100 and something thousand. That all comes out of those ACE funds. So when that 177 is adjusted in her revenue, and let's just say at the end of the year, she could be over budget, she could be under budget. We don't know where she's gonna fall. If she's under budget, what ultimately ends up happening is that goes back into our cash reserves,
Okay.
all right? So that's what happens with the
Okay,
money.
that's what's been happening.
But
Now moving
yes,
forward.
But now, and I have to, just in defense of everything, I realize that they're making, they have money through that ACE program, but the high school was the last school that was built, and they could not support themselves over the last couple of years. So when I say that they have this much reserves, reserves, what happened was John Lawrence, our bookkeeper, had to show on books that the other schools gave the high school an $800,000 loan. So even though now she has that $177,000, in her financial statements, she actually has a loan from the other schools to support the high school. So she should not, and I'm not saying this was never my decision, but that's the background why that money should not go back to her right now, but go back into the cash reserves or the cash balance.
So we're changing what we said a few minutes ago. A few minutes ago, we said those ACE funds are going to the high school. Now we're saying they're not.
Well, right now, when we do the budget amendment, it's gonna get adjusted on the high school's revenue line,
But she's not getting benefit of those funds. They're going to a fake loan
for the moment, yes.
for the moment.
For-
So when does that moment change?
Well,
Well, why does the debt have to be paid off? We did it so they can look financially healthy. It's not a true loan. Yes, there are schools funded them, but no, it didn't come out of their budget. It was
came
just a
out of the
paper, it
other
was an
schools.
entry. It was a,
came out of the other schools. Because what happened is
No,
that
but it was-
Oasis Elementary has been here the longest. So Oasis Elementary, their reserves are much bigger than the high schools.
okay, but we're talking about reserves. We're not talking about dollars used.
Right,
Right. So now we're dipping into those reserves.
right.
But this is where it gets silly. Because, really, it's just an accounting gimmick that we used. So, and we don't have to use it anymore. Right?
Well, and it's fine, if we don't, then what's the amount, the dollar amount, then that's an extra,
That's 177 is what
177,000
the
from somewhere
difference is between.
Right. Because as Mr. Hook just said, and a point of education, the ACE funds should have always been going back to the ACE program. And we've not been
And
doing it.
unfortunately, I have to go back to this.
I understand we had
No,
to
no, but
make, okay.
unfortunately, nobody's really tracked those because we don't have a good tracking mechanism to do that.
Well, it's pretty easy. It's one check a year, so.
But what are the expenses associated with ACE? How much salary
Okay.
is associated with the teachers that are teaching the ACE programs? What are the supplies that they're using for the ACE programs? What are the fees that we're paying? We just paid a $135,000 invoice. And then we have lab supplies.
That came out of the 400 and something budget.
That's how it should be. That's how it should be. So this was the very first year that every time an ACE invoice passed my desk, I started, collecting them to kind of be able to go back and say, okay, you got this much, revenue in, but you've spent this much expense. And there's no way for me to really figure out the cost of what the ACE teachers are cost, because it's supposed to offset the teacher salary as well.
So
They get a bonus. They get a bonus
that comes from,
out of that ACE money.
okay.
and I have no problem getting that. It varies
Last year, I
from-
think we paid out 20,000.
The thing that we have, and I absolutely agree that that money needs to go to the high school, that's not the question. But it is gonna be a calculation of how we're gonna figure out how that's gonna be done, because it is gonna be a little bit more complicated than it seems on paper. But remember also, because we're 4 schools, that now comes from, there's only a certain amount of money, so that whatever dollar
So
amount
what-
might be comes from something else.
And then what ultimately ends up happening is the money that is being reflected now in her reserves, that's not really her money. So we'll just take that 177 and consider that to be part of her reserves. And then she'll be even more in, you know what I'm saying?
No,
Not saying
I
that
don't.
we'll do that, but like right now, let's just say that once we fill her gap, because right now I don't know if maybe she's 700,000. Once we fulfill that gap, even though we put in there that she has the money to get her budget balanced, that's because we're using some reserves out of our cash. But that's not really her cash, because now she's gonna take the 177 and buy new computers. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I guess what I don't understand, I understand there's accounting, we had to make that quote-unquote loan so that the high school looked healthy. All right, and but we had sufficient reserves. We are a system, if we're talking about.
Right.
So, moving forward, I think we can fix it quicker than having her replay on. But how do we, you said a second, I don't know what her expenses are for ACE. Who's tracking those?
I was slowly tracking them in a file every time something came through. I sign off on all of the invoices. So every time I seen something that was reflective of ACE, I was maintaining a file.
So do you need help tracking the ACE expenses, or do you have that now?
Well, I gave Amanda my file, but I had that file, but the problem I have is I can't calculate the teacher's salary, because even though they may be a teacher, they may not teach ACE throughout the course of the day. So I need to know the portion of their salary that they teach ACE.
All right, we're not going to solve this now, and it's been a long day, but
Yeah.
I think, but
We could figure,
we
But,
need to get those
no,
funds back to ACE.
I agree. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that there's
I'll
there's
be
a lot
happy to
of
talk
other
and see
factors.
what that looks like and how you did that, Lana. Shannon?
I do want to just clarify, I wouldn't use it for computers. So I know that the need is there for technology, and I think that is a good use of the funds, but it's really about training and professional development and what the teachers need. And it's a good time for it right now because we have some folks that need it. And so there are places that we can utilize it effectively. And, it isn't my money, it isn't your money, it's money for the students. I mean, that's where this is directly going. And so I just need to understand it as well. And she and I have had these conversations throughout the year, but as you can see, this is why I am a bit frustrated with this whole process, because it doesn't fit where it goes. So I don't want you guys to think, oh, she's going to go by.
No, yeah.
I think it's a great use of the funds, but I think there are better uses right now for where we are in professional development and training and tools. We need tools.
I think you've shown with your presentation, there's plenty of holes we need to fill with those funds. So I don't think there's any concern of you misusing those funds. So we just want to get you the funds that are due you, and we got to figure out how we do that moving forward. One thing, and I think somebody else alluded to this, maybe Mr. Hook, and I'm sorry for keeping everybody here. I see Jackie's halfway out. We talk about the teachers and rewarding them, that sort of stuff, and making it a balance. I agree that it's our whole system as a whole. It's not, yes, money matters and the paycheck being the bottom line, but also if we don't properly look at our system and make ourselves stronger as a whole, the environment will suffer, and that's something as well. Our children will suffer, and that's what I think we started off with this, or how does it impact the children? And so while it might not be 6%, even though we all agree they deserve more, we do have to balance these other concerns. And moving forward, I think now that we're becoming more aware, I think more systematic, their pay is going to improve as well as our environment as a whole, now that we're setting aside funds for the removing the portables, starting to look forward. So we're getting our house in order, and I think we've done a lot in a short time, and I'm looking forward to the future.
So there's lunch waiting for us, is that correct?